Imagine discovering that your father helped put one of the most powerful mafia bosses in America behind bars. Now imagine having to live with that decision for the rest of your life. Because when the mafia's most famous informant betrayed the mob, his daughter inherited the consequences. New York City, the 1980s. Organized crime was at its peak. Mob bosses controlled gambling operations, loan sharking, extortion schemes, and criminal enterprises worth millions. At the center of it all stood a feared figure in the Gambino crime family, Sammy the Bull Gravano. To law enforcement, he was a powerful mafia underboss. To prosecutors, he was a killer. But to Karen Gravano, he was simply dad. Karen Gravano grew up surrounded by a world most people only saw in movies. Family loyalty meant everything. Respect mattered. Questions were often left unanswered. Like many children of organized crime figures, Karen has spoken publicly about growing up believing her family life was normal. The expensive gifts, the constant visitors, the unspoken rules. It was simply the world she knew. But outside the family circle, federal investigators were building cases against some of the most powerful figures in organized crime. In 1991, everything changed. Facing federal charges, Sammy Gravano made a decision that shocked the mafia world. He agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. His testimony became one of the most significant in organized crime history. Gravano admitted involvement in multiple murders and provided testimony against Gambino boss John Gotti. The testimony helped secure Gotti's conviction in 1992. The man once known as the Teflon Don was sentenced to life in prison. But while the headlines focused on Gotti, another family was being torn apart. In the mafia, there are many rules, but one stands above all others. Never cooperate with authorities. Never become an informant. Sammy Gravano had broken the code, and that meant his family would never be viewed the same way again. Suddenly, Karen Gravano wasn't just the daughter of a mobster. She was the daughter of the man many mob figures considered a traitor. Following Sammy Gravano's cooperation, the family entered the Federal Witness Protection Program. Their identities changed, their lives changed, their future became uncertain. For many families, witness protection offers safety, but it also comes with isolation. Friends disappear, communities disappear, the life you once knew is gone. Karen later spoke publicly about the difficulties of adapting to a completely different reality. Years later, the Gravano family found themselves in headlines again. In 2000, Sammy Gravano was arrested in Arizona as part of a large ecstasy trafficking investigation. He ultimately received a lengthy prison sentence, and once again, Karen faced public scrutiny connected to her family's past. The story many thought had ended years earlier suddenly returned. Unlike many relatives of organized crime figures, Karen Gravano eventually chose to tell her own story publicly. Through interviews, books, and television appearances, she discussed what it was like growing up inside of one of America's most notorious mafia families. Not as a mob boss, not as an informant, but as someone caught between loyalty to the family and the consequences of organized crime. Because history often remembers the gangsters, it remembers the bosses, the convictions, the murders, but it rarely remembers the children left behind. The story of Karen Gravano isn't really about organized crime. It's about inheritance. Not money, not power, consequences. Because children don't choose the worlds they're born into, yet they often spend their lives carrying the weight of decisions they never made. The mafia affected more than criminals. It shaped entire families. When Sammy Gravano testified against John Gotti, history was changed forever. One of America's most powerful mafia bosses went to prison. The Gambino family was shaken, and the code of silence suffered one of its greatest blows. But beyond the courtroom headlines was another story. A daughter trying to understand the world she was born into, and the consequences that followed her long after the trials ended. If you enjoyed true crime stories rooted in real history, subscribe to A Veil of Crime. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee. The link is in the bio. Because behind every mafia legend, there's a family story that rarely gets told.